Welcome to this Arnold Culliford knitwear tutorial. Today I'm going to show you how to use a really simple waste yarn cast on as a way of starting your work provisionally. I've used this cast on in the Bramante cowl pattern along with a number of the other designs in our new ebook, Something New to Learn About Helical Knitting. To find out more about helical knitting and our other books, do visit our website acknitwear.co.uk. The waste yarn provisional cast on is ever so straightforward to work. You need a waste yarn. I use a smooth cotton 4-ply. It's a mercerised cotton so it won't stick to your main yarn stitches, and that's going to be very helpful when you come to remove the waste yarn later, because you're going to want to take it back without it felting to your stitches or being difficult to remove. I tend to use this mercerised 4-ply cotton for pretty much all my waste yarn requirements. I'm going to use it now for an Aran weight project, and the 4-ply works perfectly fine. So your first step is to cast on your required number of stitches. I'm going to use the long tail cast on method because that's my method of choice, but you can use any cast on method you like. If you normally use the cable cast on or a knitted on cast on or the thumb method, you really can use any desired cast on method. You just need to put some stitches with the waste yarn onto your knitting needles. 2, 4, 6, 8. Having cast on your required number of stitches, if you're going to be working flat, you'd simply join in your main yarn and start to follow your pattern instructions. However, in this case, for the Bramante cowl and most of the other cowls in Something New to Learn About Helical Knitting, we're going to be working in the round, so I'm going to actually join in the round with my waste yarn. I'm ready to join into the round, and I'm going to do that just by knitting a couple of stitches in the waste yarn. I've now created a set of stitches that are cast on with waste yarn and joined into the round. So my job now is to swap to the main yarn and follow my pattern instructions. And all I'm going to do here is knit around in this blue yarn. You can see that I'm knitting in the round using the magic loop method, but this would work equally well and work in exactly the same way if you were using a circular needle of the right diameter or double pointed needles or any kind of needles you choose. I've just tightened up there the last stitch where we worked with the waste yarn. It had got a bit loosed. So now we're ready to continue on in pattern. So here we have a Bramante cowl on the needles. We're working helical stripes in cornflower and sky, and you can see down at the bottom here where the waste yarn cast on has been worked, and then the cornflower has been used to knit the first round of the pattern. We're now going to remove the waste yarn so that we're ready to work an I-cord cast off along those last stitches at the cast on edge. You can see at the edge here that we've got a bright blue cornflower main yarn stitch attached to the waste yarn at the cast on edge. I'm going to use a thinner needle for the pattern than the pattern calls for, to pick up the stitches because it's easier to put the needle through the stitches than with the same size. And I'm going to work along from the beginning of the round, which you can spot because you've got the two ends of yarn attached there, and I'm going to pick up the right hand side of each V of the stitches. So here's our first V, and I'm going to pick up the right hand side of it with my thinner needle, and I'm going to go all the way along the edge, picking up the right hand side of each stitch at that cast on edge. I'm just paying a little bit of attention to make sure that I don't split the yarn or pick up a bit of the waste yarn. It's not the end of the world if you do, but it just makes it easier to get them off if you pick those loops up cleanly. When you reach the halfway point in the Bramante cowl, you'll come to your second yarn, which has been started halfway round, and so from that point on you'll obviously need to be picking up the pale blue stitches, or your second yarn colour stitches, instead of the darker ones. But again, they're the stitches that are attached to the waste yarn at the cast on edge. When you come back to the beginning of the round, you may find that you've got a bit of a mess of stitches in here and it's hard to see what's going on. So just take your time and pick up what appears to be the stitch closest to the cast on edge. Here we've got a V of the pale blue, so I'm going to pick up that one, and then above it, it's not totally clear what's going on in there. I think there probably should be a dark blue stitch, but it's not obvious where the V is, but the pale blue below actually is quite clear, so we're going to pick up the stitch in the pale blue, and it won't make any difference at the end of the project that it's one more pale blue than dark blue. It's much more important that you've got all of the stitches safely onto your needles. And you can see that that first one you picked up is on that column of stitches, and this last pale blue one is on the column of stitches and adjacent to it, and we haven't missed one at the beginning of the round there. Once you're happy that you've got all of your stitches safely onto your spare needle, the next job is to remove the waste yarn. Unlike the crochet provisional cast on, where if you undo it from the correct end, the waste yarn edge will just unzip nicely all the way around, with a waste yarn cast on you have to snip it out. There's a time and a place for each of these techniques, I think. Sometimes I don't have a crochet hook to hand, in which case being able to just pick up my knitting needles and waste yarn and go is much the easiest option. But if I have got a crochet hook to hand, then the fact that the crochet cast on is so much easier to unzip might mean I take the time to do that instead. But I find it's quite handy to have more than one way of doing the same thing. So all we're going to do is literally make sure that we're cutting through the waste yarn, and we're going to go through, we're going to snip it out every few stitches. And what we will find is that we're left with the main yarn stitches on the needles, and our main yarn stitches will then be ready to work our I-cord cast off. So I'm just snipping out the last few sections of waste yarn. Obviously you do need to take care not to remove or not to cut through your main yarn. That is quite important. But once all of your waste yarn is removed, you then have live stitches on your needles ready to work the edging of your choice. I hope you can see how straightforward the waste yarn cast-on method is and that you'll find it useful in your knitting projects. If you'd like to find out more about our Something New to Learn series, do visit our website acknitwear.co.uk. Thank you.